Copa Airlines, flag carrier of Panama, operates a hub-and-spoke model connecting from Toronto to Buenos Aires. If you're flying north-south in the Americas on Star Alliance, there's a good chance it includes Copa. I flew Copa on 4 flights in Executiva or business class from Chicago to Panama to Quito, back to Panama to Washington Dulles. And I explain how I booked it in the video linked above. Initially, I was planning on being quite savage in this review, but I think Copa actually deserves some credit, and will need some context to make a fair determination. That doesn't mean I'm going to go easy on them. Let's start with the context, so as always timestamps are down below. Copa has been flying since 1947 and exclusively uses Toccumen Airport as a hub. Every Copa flight either arrives at or departs from Panama. They know almost no one is actually going to Panama and announce the flight as, quotes, to Panama and connections, end quote. If you miss old Continental Airlines, you can get your fix here. Continental owned 49% of Copa before the merger with United, and they shared a loyalty program. The logo, livery, seats, and airline lounges all draw inspiration from or are identical to those of Continental. With a hub in Panama and predominantly flying north-south, this means that most of their flights really aren't that long. Chicago-Panama was 4 hours and 45 minutes, Panama to Washington 4 hours and 20 minutes. In a way, it's a bit like Iceland Air and the now defunct WOW breaking up transatlantic flights. In fact, Chicago-Panama and Chicago-Reykjavik are nearly the same distance apart. Copa operates a nearly exclusive 737 fleet, with a dozen Embraer 190s for smaller destinations. They currently operate 3 different business class configurations on the 737. Their best product is a new, fully flat business class in a 2-2 configuration, and it looks quite interesting. However, it's only installed on the 737 MAX 9, and at the time of this trip, Maxie wasn't feeling too good. Roughly half of their 737-800s have a slightly improved product, with a little more legroom, leg rest, and personal TV screen. Copa calls this the B configuration. Finally, the last bit of their 737-800s and all of the 700s have an even older and less competitive product, which Copa calls the A configuration. With 4 flights, including 2 longer flights to and from the United States, I was hoping that I'd be able to review both A and B. But alas, I only got the inferior A configuration on all of my flights, which understandably impacts any judgment I make. I took the CTA to Chicago O'Hare, and as always admired the flawless infrastructure. I'd normally take the People Mover to get to Terminal 5, the international terminal, but a full year since my SAS video where I said it was closed, it remains so. So much of Chicago's bureaucracy, corruption, and general incompetence is reflected in this contract from hell. Why upgrading 1/3 of a mile of track takes 4 years and the city and the contractor suing each other is worth a read for sure. Terminal 5 at O'Hare is the sad odd man out. It serves a grab bag list of carriers. While the cool Star Alliance carriers like ANA and Lufthansa share Terminal 2 with United, SAS, Turkish, Swiss, Austrian, LOT, EVA, and Copa are all exiled at Terminal 5. Do note, however, that all international flights, regardless of airline, arrive at Terminal 5. The Terminal 5 infrastructure is simply insufficient for a good ground experience. It's old and the number and quality of concessions lacking. With a Star Alliance business class boarding pass, I first headed to the SAS lounge. It was beautiful, with the same sleek Scandinavian look as their lounges from around the world. Food was modest and curiously featured Nathan's hot dogs, but I was there mainly for the view. I saw a Lufthansa A350 clear the stand for LNRKR, and another batch of passengers breathed a sigh of relief it wasn't LNRKP. The Swiss lounge was very Spartan, with basically no food on offer. It was crowded, with inferior views, and I was in and out in 5 minutes. Besides the BA lounge I reviewed in my Cathay Pacific review, there's also an Air France lounge and a Swissport lounge. The Copa check-in lady said to go to the Swissport lounge, but I noticed Copa wasn't mentioned anywhere. The woman at the lounge had apparently never heard of Copa Airlines. I whipped out my priority pass, but the attendant glanced at the PAC lounge and sheepishly lied that the machine was broken and to please go bother the Air France folks, which I did. They at least had the cojones to say that the lounge was full and turned me away. With everyone and their mother now running around with a free priority pass from credit cards, overcrowding is a real issue. Nobody respects it anymore.
Respect my priority!
We were instructed to be at the gate 1 hour before departure, which seemed unnecessary for a 737. On the jet bridge, 5 government agents stood with a Belgian Malinois, who sniffed everyone. Upon boarding, the cabin interior was incredibly hot, uncomfortably so. Copa asks that before deplaning, you lower the window shades and turn on the AC vents to full, and I can see why. Despite early boarding, pushback was delayed by about 15 minutes, plus additional waiting on the runway, and we departed 40 minutes late. Flying time was 4 hours and 45 minutes. As there's 4 flights to cover, I don't want to get repetitive. I'll discuss something different for each leg, and first up is the seat. These seats are identical to those in the Continental, now United, fleet. There's 38 inches of legroom and 21 inches of width. There's no power, footrest, or entertainment like on the B configuration. Pillows and blankets were provided on the longer flights, and no amenity kit was offered. Perhaps those are reserved for YouTubers on inaugural flights or flights over a certain length. All of mine were under 5 hours. The only entertainment was the overhead monitors, and the aircraft had no Wi-Fi. The seats were worn but comfortable, a bit like a weathered armchair. The lack of a footrest was noticeable though, especially when reclined and trying to sleep. The lavatory was a 737 lavatory with nothing special. We flew straight south, passing the Florida Keys, flying over Cuba, then the Caribbean, and landed in Panama in the dark. Cabin lights were not dimmed, which made filming landing effectively impossible. While taxiing, all the windows immediately steamed up. Let's next talk about Panama's Toccumen airport, the hub of the Americas. While originally a small and rather old airport, it is currently undergoing a major expansion with the construction of a brand new second terminal. Construction looked almost finished, with the lack of merchants and inoperable moving walkways the only visible outstanding points. Note though that in the entire terminal, including the older parts, the moving walkways are for display purposes only, and are all blocked off. With an hour and 20-minute layover, I went to the Copa Airlines Club. For the life of me, I couldn't find it, as the signage was non-existent. Again, it feels right like Continental stuck in the 1990s. You get access with business class, as well as priority pass. So Hub of the Americas, your flagship lounge. Show me what you got, Copa. A la carte dining? Signature cocktails? Spa services? Nap rooms? Oh. Wow. Yes, this is the most impressive spread I've ever seen in a lounge. I mean, I get it. It's Latin America. Connections are short. There's chairs, bar, Wi-Fi, and you can watch soccer. What more do you need? It is better than the terminal, but memorable? No. I would point out that the Wi-Fi is actually incredibly fast, one of the fastest I've ever seen in a lounge globally, and caught me totally by surprise. So there's that. After a short stint, I headed to my flight to Quito. There was a group of 3 chicas in my row who asked me to trade seats. Fine. Flying time was an hour 20. Again, cabin lights were not dimmed, so recording was a struggle. On this leg, let's talk about beverages. On 3 of the 4 flights, we were offered a pre-departure drink of water or orange juice. Given the heat of the cabin, I eagerly asked for orange juice. It was horrid. I'm not expecting fresh squeezed here, but whatever was coming out of that Del Monte box wasn't great. Just go for the water, trust me. The rest of the drink menu is quite sufficient, with 3 highlights. There's a rum, red, and white wine of the month that you should try. On one flight, I had a Flor de Cana 18-year rum, which retails for $40 a bottle. Again, nothing super premium here, but decent enough. After another landing with the lights on, we arrived at Quito's Mariscal Sucre Airport. The altitude is no joke, and you feel it as soon as you step off the plane. Quito is a fun place for a day or two. But some of the locals seemed a bit too excited. Returning from Quito, I should point out one of the absolutely best contract lounges I have ever seen, the Sala VIP in the International Terminal. Forget the Copa Club, this was better than anything Chicago had to offer, and my priority pass was happily accepted. There was real food, sushi, ceviche, and sandwiches, both prepared and made to order. The bartender made a host of real cocktails, though you're capped at 2 drinks per person. Seating was varied and comfortable, and power outlets readily available. There's even an outdoor bit and a log cabin for kids. So nice job, Sala VIP.
Nice.
I feel sorry for the folks on the American flight to Miami. It was delayed 16 hours. Sadly, I wasn't surprised, and I'll circle back to this at the end. Boarding was quite comical. I had printed out all of my boarding passes on Avianca stock from my prior flight, but was told they wouldn't work, and were reprinted on Copa paper. Even so, they didn't work. There was a fancy new self-boarding gate where you scanned your boarding pass and it opened. But it failed to work for everyone, so they were scanned at the desk. Except mine didn't work at the desk. It did scan at the self-boarding gate, but the doors didn't open. Good enough. The division of labor for baggage handling was rather odd. 2 loaded bags, 1 checked the tags manually, while another 2 stood around, and a 3rd was texting on WhatsApp. For this 1 hour and 20-minute flight, let's talk food. On the longer flights, a full menu is presented with appetizer, choice of Caesar or Italian dressing on the salad, choice of entree, and choice of dessert. For the shorter flights, the appetizer is removed and there's only 1 option for dessert. Meals are preceded by a hot towel and warm nuts or pretzels. The food isn't hit or miss, it's more like miss and near miss. I've teased plenty of airlines for lackluster salads, but Copa salads takes the cake. They include lettuce and 1 additional item, seemingly just from what they had left over. Celery? Sure. Canned baby corn? Why not? Carrots and a single tomato? Ooh, fancy. I only ate on 3 of the flights. My first flight came with an appetizer, a Waldorf salad. The chicken was fine, but mayonnaised apple with no grapes or walnuts? Not great. The first entree I had was chicken and fettuccine, which was cafeteria level of quality. And not like good cafeteria, more like your high school. The second entree was a smoked salmon sandwich. It was on the smaller side, but for the shorter flight it was fine. The other option was a chickeny, goopy sandwich that looked rather suspicious. Correlation, causation, I know, but 2 people who ordered it had to leave the immigration line and run to the bathroom. Glad I went with the salmon. Speaking of which, I had salmon and risotto on my 3rd flight. The risotto was pretty bland but edible. Also, it had a sort of cheese in it, but it sure wasn't Parmesan. The salmon was surprisingly not bad for plain salmon, but it wasn't good by any means. For dessert, I had a sundae with caramel sauce poured from a plastic packet, which was fine, while on the shorter flights there was a small cheesecake or tres leches, which was innocuous. On approach in Panama, we saw some of the ships lined up for the canal. With an hour layover in Panama and my past experience with the Copa Club, I decided to head straight to my next gate. And boy, I was glad that I did. There was a massive security line at the gate, as all flights to the US get another round of security. Although I was in line an hour before departure, boarding was already at Group 3 by the time I got through. Turns out I could have skipped the line as I was in business class, but nobody told me, there was no sign, and I'm not that kind of jerk who tries to cut in line. The last flight had an even older interior and no scimitar winglets. When menus were passed out, I saw it was exactly what I had just eaten, other than an additional asparagus soup, so I passed. With only 4 hours and 20 minutes of flying time, landing at 3:30 a.m., I needed as much sleep as possible. As soon as I could, I popped melatonin with some white wine, reclined my seat, whipped out my Cathay Pacific eye shades, remember, no amenity kit, and Bose QC35s, and slept as much as I could. Let's conclude with the service. On 3 of the 4 flights, it was really good. We were welcomed by name, thanked at the end of the flight, and pre-departure drinks offered. The cabin crew spoke good English, as well as Spanish of course, and service was prompt and courteous. But on one of them, Panama to Quito, something was definitely off. No pre-departure drink, and the crew were more interested in chatting at the front with each other than providing a service on such short flight. The safety video is very dated and likely ripped from Continentals as well. There was also loud, obnoxious ads for Claro before and Iberostar afterwards. Look, you want people to pay attention to the safety video. Adding ads is a great way to make folks tune out. Finally, I should observe that there were 2 women on the flight deck, a first officer on the way down and the captain herself on the way up. 9% of Copa's pilots are women, and while obviously quite low, that's much higher than most other airlines, including those in the United States. We landed at Dallas Airport and took a mobile lounge to immigration. Comically, at this hour, global entry, US citizens, and foreign nationals were all combined into a single line. So Copa. As I said at the top, this is a tricky one. Is it a competitive international business class product? Absolutely not. If you can get on a real lie-flat seat on Avianca, American, Aeromexico, LATAM, or United, you might like that more. But most US airlines fly absolute rust buckets, 757s, to Latin America. For American, these were supposed to be replaced by the 737 MAX. But with Maxi out of the picture, 757s keep slogging on, and that's why I was hardly surprised about a 16-hour delay. But is Copa business class better than a Project Oasis American 737? Absolutely! Is it better than European business class where they just block off the seat? Definitely. Is it better than Avianca's single-aisle jets? I'd say likely equivalent, and that review is coming soon. Is it better than domestic first class on a non-transcontinental route on United, American, or Delta? Likely. The seats are so similar, literally the same in the case of United, and the B and Max configurations will only make Copa pull further ahead. And with 3 out of 4 good crews, it's likely the service would be better as well. So I wouldn't go out of my way to fly Copa, but it's fine for what it is and serves its market well. No, I wouldn't pay cash for business class on this one. But it's often not that many more miles, and if the cabin is light, they'll offer upgrades for a small amount of money. So it might be worth it if you want some extra space to sleep. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe for more flight reviews. I'll see you on the next one.